Lindsey May. I am a graduate student in the Master's of Arts in Professional Communication here at the University of Tampa. Today I will be presenting my capstone paper regarding viewing habits in the pandemic with the help of my advisor, Professor Sonali Kudva. During this presentation, I will be covering the important topics of my paper, such as the introduction, research question, literature review, method, discussion, future implications, and the conclusion. So let's get started. So, television is a huge part of our culture as a society. It can link values, habits, entertainment, education, and communities. My number one reason for researching this topic is because it's something I'm familiar with. I watch a lot of content, and I became intrigued by how my own viewing habits were affected during the pandemic. We've moved as a society from appointment viewing to accessing streaming services, so we are now able to watch shows whenever and wherever we want with an overwhelming amount of content. This change of format for television has altered the way we think about TV. Without networks controlling what shows become popular, we as the audience were able to control what we wanted to watch. So, my research question is as follows. How has the pandemic altered audiences' viewing tastes? Analyzing these changes would give a better insight into how the medium controls the message. To learn how a real viewer's television habits were changed during the pandemic and what future implications of viewing habits, streaming services, and audience engagement were going to look like. To gather some background research on these topics, I really wanted to focus on streaming services and the pandemic. So I was able to find some useful data. From the start of the pandemic, the average number of streaming video on demand subscriptions per household had increased by 10% according to Ashar et al. 2021. The demand for access to content was surging through the months of lockdown and quarantine, and what was able to set platforms apart like Netflix and Amazon were their original series like Stranger Things, The Handmaid's Tales, and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Releasing series with all episodes available at once created a new world for audiences to engage with. This type of viewing experience became a way for people to cope during the pandemic. Which brings me to my next topic of binge watching, which can be defined as watching 2 or more episodes in a rapid succession. The study of this form of viewing has been researched for many years now, linking viewers to depression, social anxiety, stress, and loneliness, and mainly is used as a form of escapism or distraction. During the pandemic, many young adults found themselves participating in excessive screen time, negatively affecting their sleep, physical well-being, and mental health. But with each new mass communications medium, such as streaming services, there becomes a need to analyze the uses and gratifications, motivations, and effects regarding that technology. So, researching the uses and gratifications theory is useful to understand why people seek out certain media for certain needs because it is an audience-centered approach for researching mass communication. This theory was developed to learn more about people's media choices, their needs for requiring them, and what gratifications they receive from usage. Television has become a topic of research using the UNG framework because of the rich audience behavior in the evolving industry of streaming services. So, viewing habits during the pandemic have become a well-researched topic recently due to its relevancy with most studies looking to analyze its relationship to mental health issues. With research focusing on watching television as a form of self-care, more studies need to research the short and long-term effects it could have on society. With increased time, leisure time, and an unbalanced mindset, many people had to decide how best to cope with an unfamiliar situation during the pandemic. According to Borze et al. 2021, TV series represents an effective coping strategy to deal with emotional distress by allowing viewers to find temporary shelter in the fictional world of a series while experiencing pleasure and fulfilling self-development and social needs. So the pandemic was experienced all over the world, giving audiences different encounters with streaming services, cable television, and digital media according to accessibility. There is little research to back our internal choices of certain genres and shows to help us understand our decision making. So, according to Renfro et al. 2011, the connections between personality and entertainment preference dimensions suggest that people seek out entertainment that reflects and reinforces aspects of their personalities. So, several studies use the social identity theory to understand television viewing and entertainment usage. With this theory, the background of how we categorize ourselves in groups can help be explained, which leads to the next step of individual decision making. For this research, I decided to use an autoethnography approach so I would be able to conduct and analyze my own data and experience. According to Ellis et al. 2011, autoethnography is a type of research that allows an author to use self-reflection to explore personal experiences and connect them to cultural, political, and social meanings and understandings. So, to examine how viewing habits changed throughout the first year of the pandemic, this research will be analyzing a timeline of two lists, specific shows that were watched, and examine patterns and themes that connect to what was going on in the world at the time of viewing. So all shows, series, and seasons were watched from March through December 2020 and can be found on Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney Plus. This research only studies the effects of viewing habits regarding television shows and streaming services' original content series, so to better analyze like one type of medium. During the pandemic, viewing habits were altered due to the lack of new content and heightened accessibility. Some viewers returned to comfort shows and rewatched favorite series, while others stepped out of safe choices and took a chance on something different. Regardless, society was looking for a distraction during a high stress, confusing period, and watching streaming services proved useful as a coping mechanism. At the beginning of March 2020, news of the coronavirus had spread to the US that people in China were starting to become sick and it was possible it could be a danger for the rest of the world. Without preparation for what was about to be a very historic year, I found myself in a phase that numbed my decision making skills, which left me to watch shows that were recommended by the top 10 list on Netflix and whatever was trending online. So shows like Tiger King, where the media was becoming bombarded with discussions about these crazy characters and storylines, became similar to the crazy times that we were living through. When people are in distress over the unknown, two choices can be made to find comfort. You can distract yourself through entertainment or indulge yourself in preparation by information. I decided to watch pandemic and medical emergency thrillers, like that genre, to allow myself the opportunity to be comforted for a moment to see how others acted and handled a situation that I was completely unfamiliar with. The initial 2 to 3 weeks that people had predicted it would take for the virus to go away was over, and it had unfortunately become clear that no one could say when the end would be. So, for the majority of April 2020, familiarity was needed, and that leads to the next category of Disney Plus. After viewing so much of what other people were watching and engaging in a genre that was painfully realistic, it was vital to me to make comfortable choices that were guaranteed to be enjoyed. So during April 2020, I spent my time watching old shows that premiered on Disney Channel in the early 2000s and that were now available to stream on Disney Plus. So viewing shows like Lizzie McGuire, The Proud Family, Even Stevens, and Not So Raven served as a symbol for security. My social media was bombarded with clips and scenes from these new reality dating series that had never been intriguing to me. Shows like Love is Blind, Too Hot to Handle, and The Circle were all shows that became extremely popular during this time and were recommended to me. They would all make it to like my list of shows that I could not get into that everyone else seemed to enjoy, similar to shows like The Bachelor, Big Brother, or The Real Housewives. By the end of May 2020, in the beginning of June, the climate of fear, hostility, and sadness approached a new level. On May 31st, On May 31st, millions flooded to the street to protest the killing of George Floyd and police violence against Black Americans. Throughout this period, streaming services like Netflix and Amazon Prime were offering a new feature called the Black Lives Matter Collection, which was full of series and films showcasing predominantly Black voices to educate and inform about history and culture. This had surprised me as a longtime subscriber to these services because I'd never really seen collections like this be featured as soon as you signed into your profile. I then fell into a phase where I only consumed media regarding the history and culture of the Black experience in America. On July 31st, the official death toll in America passed 150,000 people, with Latinos and Native Americans representing an increasing proportion of the deaths alongside Black Americans. With the end of the summer months nearing, still living in a lockdown state of mind, practicing social distancing, wearing face masks, and following state and health guidelines, they're quickly taking a toll on mental health issues. So, needing something positive, happy, and heartwarming to watch, my next pandemic series choice was reality series about unique dating and love experiences, like shows like Love on the Spectrum, Indian Matchmaking, and Say I Do. Reality series are not my typical show to pick because they tend to be focused too much on appearances or money, status, and they usually follow the traditional storyline of heterosexual relationships. So, reality dating shows can become repetitive with the consistent themes of drama, fighting, and written lines, which can make the series predictable and sometimes boring. Shows like these were necessary to watch during a time of like boring, repetitive days when many people struggled to find new love or have a spark in their current relationships. So, with August comes a new school year, and this pandemic year brought protests by teachers and parents alike, and learning became hybrid, and you had to decide whether or not to participate in online or in person teaching. to feel some sense of security during a time that seemed quite unpredictable, the next viewing choices required full attention and distractions from the real world, which left me feeling like you were maybe a kid again with little to no worries at all. The next series I watched were Never Have I Ever, Teenage Bounty Hunters, Trinkets, Emily in Paris, Sex Education, and The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. All of these series have in common a theme of youthfulness and excitement, where the main characters are naive, innocent, learning from their mistakes, and taking each day as it comes with the reality of life. During this period, it was comforting to watch shows that remind you to stay calm during crazy times and be patient through new journeys. The late fall of 2020 brought tension, restlessness, and a great deal of unease. While it seemed like the nation was overcome with political unrest and the media was obsessed with nothing but negativity, it was important to take a break from the news and engage with content that would improve your mental health. So the next choices that were made were ones of pure comfort, where I got to watch old and new seasons of shows that I loved and knew I would enjoy. So watching series like Grey's Anatomy, The Ozarks, 13 Reasons Why, and Queer Eye was a form of self-care that proved vital in a time where I was surrounded by chaos. So when finding something new to watch was feeling like another dispiriting task to achieve, familiar content was easy and comfortable to view. Usually, the end of the year signifies a time of celebration, rest, gratefulness, and reflection, but of course, the end of 2020 felt different. The end of this year and the beginning of 2021 caused discomfort and pain for many who were once again turned to entertainment for escape and distraction. So during this time, my usual choices of holiday films, like Christmas movies filled with family, love, and cherished moments, did not feel right to watch. I chose to watch shows I knew I would like for their historical accuracy, morality, and wholesomeness that engage the audience with something different besides like money, sex, and drugs that commonly saturate the media and popular television shows. So, watching British series such as Call the Midwife, The Crown, Bridgerton, and Downton Abbey allowed me to travel to a different time to distract myself from current worries, giving me the ultimate form of entertainment. The year 2020 forced networks to pause production, leaving them unable to push new content out regularly, giving control back to the audience on decision making. Viewers became responsible for what to watch next, managing what became a trending show, giving old shows a chance to rise in popularity again. So, events in the pandemic strongly influenced television viewing tastes. Lockdown, isolation, and quarantine brought new needs for viewing that were decided by individuals instead of media companies. The strain of the pandemic caused viewers to look for shows that were fully engaging and captivating, where they would be distracted, stimulated, and uplifted. Future research needs to be done to understand what content is acceptable to view in a society altered by the pandemic, isolation, and quarantine. Further research should be conducted to learn how streaming services can evolve their digital experiences to better fit the needs of their audiences. Studying this change in viewing habits can help reveal who audiences are today, how they are being shaped, and where they're headed. It's so important to understand how the medium controls the message so we can learn how views are being altered. The purpose of this paper was to analyze specific viewing habits through a study of why certain shows were watched during the pandemic. In a time where society is overwhelmed by digital content, the pandemic was able to give viewers a chance to tap into their social identity and learn what they enjoy as an individual and not what is just being targeted at them. So, with this information, we can learn what audiences need and get out of television shows and how to access that appropriate content accordingly. So, when the audience can recognize what not only they want to see, but what they need to see, then viewers can call for a new medium where they get to choose their message. Now that I've discussed how my personal viewing habits were altered through the effects of the pandemic, I encourage you to analyze your own viewing history. Um, this brings me to the end of the presentation, so thank you all for tuning in and thank you for listening.